Hi everyone, I'm Hextasy, and today we'll be playing through a hardcore Nuzlocke of LeafGreen, but with a twist. I have a document written up with several changes appearing on screen now, and after every gym leader will randomly be implementing one of these changes. The first 20 will have a negative impact, while the last 5 will have helpful changes. So let's get into the run. First things first, we need a starter. Bulbasaur is my favorite of the 3, and they have a huge advantage over the early portions of the game. So we'll be taking Charmander. To match adding random rules, we'll be using a random name generator for our team, and Charmander gets named Shaw. I can't say I'll be pronouncing every name we get correctly, but in this case it doesn't matter since Squirtle lands an early critical hit and we can't make up the damage difference. Shaw gets bodied and dies. So we have a reset, get a new Charmander, this one named Yaxkin, and they are able to beat Squirtle this time. With us actually able to leave Pallet Town now, we can start catching some more Pokemon. At Route 1, we catch Mawonyo the Rattata. West of Viridian City, we meet Yamikani the Mankey. Route 2 has Rudo the Pidgey, and in the Viridian Forest we find Sawyer the Weedle, who quickly evolves into a Beedrill. We take on the optional rival battle on Route 22, but Mawonyo takes out his Pidgey with a few quick attacks, and his Squirtle goes down to a couple scratches from Yamikani, already proven to be valuable, and they'll continue to do so against the first gym leader, Brock. Despite being underleveled, they score a one-hit KO against his Geodude with a critical hit Karate Chop, and takes the following Onix out with a couple low kicks to win the fight. Winning here has us implementing our first rule change. We'll be generating a number and adding the rule that corresponds with it. And we get 20 right off the bat, what I'm calling the King Rule. Our lowest leveled Pokemon can no longer leave our party, and if they get killed, we lose the game, kind of like being checkmated in chess, hence the name. The lowest level is a tie between Mawonyo, Sawyer, and Rudo, so we change the number generator to pick between 1 and 3, and we roll a 3. Rudo is the 3rd level 10 member, so they are our new king. Moving on, we find a Spearow named Mayamiko on Route 3, and in Mount Moon we catch Nanda the Geodude. We could buy a Magikarp for our Route 4 encounter, but they'll be plentiful later, so we hold off on that for now. Rudo and Yaxkin evolve on the way through Mount Moon, and at the end of it we grab the Helix fossil before arriving at the other end of Route 4, where our first encounter is a Sandshrew. They have a solid defense stat, so I try to soften them up with a quick attack, but Mawonyo decides to score a critical hit and kill them. Maybe I was in the wrong for attacking a Pokemon 11 levels below Mawonyo, but we find a second Sandshrew at the same level and they are able to survive a quick attack, so I think I can chalk up losing out on a Route 4 encounter as bad luck and not me being a dingus. Before we can attempt any more encounters, we need to take on our rival once more. We start with Yaxkin against his Pidgeotto, and despite having our accuracy dropped by Sand Attack, we're able to land a few Embers to bring them into the red. They swap out for Squirtle before they go down, and our Ember misses, so we swap out to Sawyer as they use Withdrawal to boost their defense, but it won't do them any good because our first Poison Sting leaves them poisoned, and we can just wait them out. They do drop Sawyer's defense a couple times with Tail Whip, so we swap to Mawonyo to avoid dying to a crit. A Hyper Fang and Quick Attack finishes Squirtle, and his weakened Pidgeotto comes back in. They can't survive a Quick Attack, and his Rattata is in next, but it gets destroyed by a single Hyper Fang. All he has left is Abra, but with no offensive moves, it's a guaranteed win for us. Beating our rival here gives us access to a couple new routes. At Route 204, we find an Abra, and just like our rivals, all it can do is use Teleport, escaping from us and stopping us from getting a new Pokemon on this route. Luckily, Route 25 is right next to us, and we catch a Bellsprout here. The name generator tells us to call them Ridkiz, but I'm pretty sure the website is just having a stroke and this isn't a real name, so we re-roll it. Pacey it is. Pacey immediately gets hit by a Slowpoke's confusion and dies. What an unfortunate and completely unavoidable tragedy. The last 3 routes have effectively given us 0 new Pokemon, but after we meet up with Bill at the end of Route 205, we get access to even more new areas to catch Pokemon. But before we go to them, we evolve Milwunyo and Mayamiko into Eradicate and Fearow respectively. Route 5 is next, and we catch Merit the Meowth, and in Vermilion City, we get an old rod that lets us fish up Kealoha the Magikarp at Route 6. Before going further, we'll take on the second gym leader, Misty. Starting with Milwunyo against her Staryu, we outspeed them and land a Hyper Fang for the one-hit KO, and Starmie is up next. We move first and land a Hyper Fang to wipe out more than half of their HP, and we get hit by a Water Pulse to take out half of ours. But we can then land another Hyper Fang for the KO to win us the fight. With our victory here, we have to roll the number generator again and get a 10. Our highest level Pokemon dies. It's a 4-way tie between Milwunyo, Mayamiko, Rudo, who will be immune due to being the king, and Sawyer. So we roll to decide who dies, and it's the first party member, Milwunyo. Soloed the gym leader just to get thrown under the bus. We head back to Vermilion City next, where we catch Sal the Drowsy just east of the city, and then hop aboard the SS Anne for another rival battle. We start with Mayamiko to take on his Pidgeotto, and we land a few pecks to take them down while losing close to half of our HP. Eradicate is in next, so we switch to Yamikani on a Hyper Fang that lanes for big damage, but Yamikani can outspeed on the next turn and take them out with a single Karate Chop. Kadabra is in next, and just like Eradicate, we should outspeed and one-shot them. We do not outspeed them, and Yamikani dies to a confusion. We bring Mayamiko back in, and they actually outspeed Kadabra, bringing them below half HP with a peck before their confusion drops us into the red. One more peck takes them out, and all our rival has left is Wartortle. We switch to Sawyer, getting hit by a critical hit water gun right away, but our first Twin Needle also crits, so I can't complain. Wartortle uses Withdraw to boost their defenses, but a couple Twin Needles still takes them out to win us the fight. With the Cut HM in hand, our next stop is the third gym leader, but first, we stop by Diglett's Cave where we find Sashi the Diglett. For the fight with Surge, we start with Yaxkin against his Voltorb. We outspeed them to use Dig, but it just misses the KO, and Yaxkin loses half their defense to a Screech. Knowing Surge will heal, we use Ember to weaken them up before finishing Voltorb with a Dig on the next turn. Pikachu comes in next, but goes down to a Dig before it can do anything. Their static ability activates and leaves Yaxkin paralyzed, but they were holding a Cherry Berry and are instantly cured. Raichu is up next, and it hits Yaxkin with a Thunder Wave to paralyze them again, this time with no berry to cure it. Yaxkin powers through paralysis on both turns of Dig, and manages to land it on Raichu even after they use Double Team. We then switch to Sashi as Raichu uses Shockwave, which we're immune to. Raichu lands a quick attack to bring us close to half HP, and we miss a Magnitude. Raichu sets up another Double Team, but our second Magnitude lands for the KO. Winning here means we roll the dice again, and this time we get a 9, once again killing our highest leveled Pokemon. And with a 5-way tie, it ends up being our 4th Pokemon to die, so we lose Mayamiko the Fearow. It's time for us to start heading towards Lavender Town. On the way there at Route 9, we catch Ellie and the Sandshrew. Route 10 has Hera the Voltorb, and in the Rock Tunnel we find Netta the Onix. While we're in the cave, we evolve Elias into a Sandslash and Sal into a Hypno. Arriving at Lavender Town, we'll be skipping over the rival fight for now since we'll be heading back this way later. Heading to Celadon City, we pass through Route 8 where we try to catch a Vulpix, but it uses Roar to escape. Then at Route 7, we find another Vulpix, and learning my lesson, I immediately throw my balls at it. but it doesn't work and we immediately get hit by a roar and the encounter is over. That's great. But at least in Celadon, we're guaranteed to get a new Pokemon. We can gamble away all our money and get enough coins at the game corner to buy a Dratini, who we named Junie. And we have enough left over to get some powerful TMs. We could go further and try to catch a Doduo at Route 16, but we'll hold off on that for now until we catch the Snorlax here. In preparation for the next gym, we evolve Kialoha into a Gyarados, and we also evolve Nanda into a Graveler while bumping them up to the level cap. We'll be entering this next gym under-leveled, so when the number generator inevitably rolls a 6, 7, or 8, Nanda will die instead of one of the Pokemon we're hoping to bring to the end. Getting into that gym battle with Erica, she starts a Victory Bell, while we bring out Sal. We move first and land a critical hit Confusion for the one-hit KO, and Tangela is brought out. We swap to Sawyer, who's immune to the incoming Poison Powder, and then take them down with a couple Twin Needles before it can damage us. All she has left is Vileplume, who loses a quarter of their HP to Twin Needle before paralyzing Sawyer with a Stun Spore, but they were holding a Cherry Berry to cure them. Another Twin Needle brings them to half, and another Stun Spore leaves us paralyzed with no cure. Their Acid doesn't do a lot of damage, and our Twin Needle nearly kills, so knowing they'll heal, we swap to Sal as Erica uses a Hyper Potion. Confusion does solid damage and leaves Vileplume confused, but they still manage to land a Stun Spore on Sal, but they too had a Cherry Berry to cure them, and they retaliate with a critical hit Confusion to win us the fight. The roll we get for winning here ends up being 25, revive 1 dead Pokemon, and with 4 dead Pokemon, we roll a d4 and get a 1. Moonyo is the first Pokemon in the Heaven Box, so they're brought back. Unfortunately, our slot for a normal-type mammal with whiskers and a mix between cream and tawny-colored fur is now occupied by Merit, who we evolve into Persian, so this revive really doesn't do anything for us. Anyways, we have our first fight with Team Rocket's Giovanni next. He starts with an Onix while we bring out Elian. We use Dig to avoid their first rock throw and hit them for well over half of their HP. They get 2 Hardens up to double their defense before the next Dig hits, but it isn't enough and they go down. Rhyhorn is in next, also surviving the first Dig, and they hit us with a Tail Whip to drop our defense before being taken out by Brick Break. All that's left is his Kangaskhan, who outspeeds us and lands another Tail Whip, effectively cutting our defense in half, before we land Brick Break for a solid chunk of damage. We're then hit hard by a Mega Punch that brings us below half HP before our next Brick Break brings them into the red. We can't survive another Mega Punch, so we swap to Yaxkin as Kangaskhan uses Tail Whip, but we should be fine to stay in and finish off Kangaskhan. Elias lost more defense and survived a Mega Punch, so Yaxkin should too, right? They do not. We send out Sal to avenge Yaxkin with a Brick Break and win us the fight. This is going to sound bad, but I wish Yaxkin died sooner so we would have a chance to revive them. But with the Sylph Scope in hand, we can return to Lavender Town for another rival fight. But after Elias removes Pidgeotto and their Sand Attack from the mix, Kialoha is able to tear through our rivals team with no trouble. Going to the higher levels of the Pokemon Tower, we catch Farai the Ghastly, evolve Junie into a Dragonair, save Mr. Fuji from Team Rocket, and receive the Poké Flute, allowing us to return to Route 16 to take on the sleeping Snorlax. After Junie paralyzes them with a Thunder Wave, we begin swapping between Kialoha and our physically bulky rock types. Our goal is to reduce the damage Snorlax can do as much as possible, since this thing tends to be a pain in the ass to catch. But all that preparation was unnecessary since we catch them with our first Great Ball, and we name them Santana. With him caught, we can enter Cycling Road, where we catch Steph the Doduo, and arrive at Fuchsia City, where we can fish up Sasa the Goldeen, and hit up the Safari Zone, where we are lucky enough to catch Kaoru the Paris after a couple turns they could have escaped in. Heading back up towards Lavender Town from the other side, we catch Vasia the Venonat at Route 15. Route 14 sees us catching Ada the Ditto. We meet Jaya the Krabby at Route 13. And finally, at Route 12, we catch Indiana the Horsey. A surplus of Pokemon will be great in case we pull more rules that result in fatalities, like Rule 16 where we have to sacrifice a Pokemon to evolve another. But we don't have it, so we can freely evolve Rudo into a Pidgeot. Just in time for another rival battle, though our goal is to not use them and to keep them safe. He starts with a Pidgeot of his own, while we bring out Junie, who outspeeds them and brings them below half HP with a Thunderbolt, also leaving them paralyzed. But they power through to take out about a third of our HP with a Wing Attack. A second Thunderbolt takes them down, and Growlithe is up next. Our Surf just misses the KO, and we lose another third of our HP to takedown, but then we finish them off with another Surf. Execute comes in just to instantly die to an Ice Beam, and when our rival brings out Alakazam, we switch to Santana as they use Future Sight. They set up a Calm Mind, but it doesn't matter since a single Shadow Ball from Santana scores the KO, and all he has left is Blastoise. Between their Water Gun and Future Sight finally hitting Santana, they only lose about a fourth of their HP, and Blastoise loses much more to a single one of our Body Slams. So a couple more of those earns us the wins, and right after is our second battle with Giovanni. He starts with a Nidorino against Sal, who just fails to KO with Psychic, so we get hit by a Fury attack for a little damage. A second Psychic brings them down, and Nidoqueen is brought out next. They're able to land a couple Body Slams and Poison Stings, luckily not inflicting any status effects, and we take them down with a couple Psychics. Kangaskhan is brought out next, and we switch to Kialoha for the Intimidate attack drop as they use Tail Whip to lower our defense. We then switch to Elian on another Tail Whip, and we outspeed to land a Brick Break that takes out a little less than half their HP, and they land another Tail Whip to bring our defense down to half. The second Brick Break just misses the KO, and they hit us with Rage. This hardly hurts Elian, and they finish off Kangaskhan with a third Brick Break. All Giovanni has left is Rhyhorn, but we can just swap out to Kialoha to take them down with a single Surf. Winning here earns us the Master Ball, and we can also get a free Lapras who we name Almas. And because the Sylph building is a different area from the city it's in, we can also get a free Hitmonlee that we name Cedar. While we're in the city, we may as well take on the gym leader Sabrina. Starting with Santana against her Kadabra. They set up a Future Sight before going down to a single Shadow Ball, and Mr. Mime is up next. They use Barrier to double their defenses, allowing them to survive a Shadow Ball, before baton passing that buff to Venomoth, who takes much less damage. They move first and land a Supersonic to confuse us, and we hit ourselves in confusion. Not wanting to deal with these shenanigans, we swap to Sal, who takes little damage from a Psybeam, but also gets confused. We cannot escape the shenanigans as they hit themselves in confusion twice in a row, and I realize we need to swap them out. We bust out Kialoha, who takes them out with just a couple Surfs, and Mr. Mime comes back in, but their HP is low enough for them to go down to a Bite, and all that's left is her Alakazam. After using Calm Mind, our Bite doesn't do a lot of damage, so we switch to Santana as they continue to set up Calm Minds. They refuse to stop setting up, and we take them out with a Shadow Ball before they can put those stat boosts to use to win the fight. For winning this fight, the rule we have to add is number 14. We can only use damaging moves from now on. We'll have to drop Santana's Rest and Yawn, Rudo's Feather Dance, Sal's Hypnosis, and Junie's Thunder Wave, along with removing the status moves from all the Pokemon in our PC. Speaking of those Pokemon, I realized we actually have filled out the Pokédex enough to get the item finder and get the leftovers from the 2 spots that were blocked off by Snorlax. Afterwards, we can take on Koga, the poison-type gym leader. But with a few psychics, Sal is able to single-handedly win the fight without taking any damage. That means we'll have to add another rule, and we roll a 9. We've already rolled that, so let's try again. 19. We can only catch Pokemon of types that match that of one of our living Pokemon. That basically only bars us from catching fire types, so let's reroll that one more time. Okay, 19 it is. Beating Koga doesn't only stop us from catching fire types, but also lets us use Surf in the overworld, letting us catch Or the Tentacool at Route 19. And by flying back to Viridian City, we can catch Shams the Slowpoke there. Heading south past Pallet Town, we can catch Quan the Tangela on a small patch of grass on Route 21, and once we reach Cinnabar Island, we can revive our Helix fossil, giving us Marvin the Ammonite. In the Pokemon Mansion, we find Yash the Grimer, and we can take a detour to the Seafoam Islands to grab a seal named Blanca. We can fight the 7th gym leader Blaine next, but just like Koga, he's easily beaten by a single Pokemon, this time Kialoha spamming Surf. So we have to introduce another rule. This time we get 24, one of the beneficial ones that allows us to get another encounter at a random location. We determine this location via the extremely inefficient method of flipping through random Bulbapedia articles until we find a place we can visit, and it ends up being the Pokemon Mansion, so we catch Koba the Coughing there. Right after is our final battle with Giovanni, now acting as the 8th gym leader. But our plan is the exact same as it was against Blaine. Spam Surf until we win. This time the rule change was much more impactful. Rule 17, which reduces our party size down to 5, and with Rudo having to be protected at all costs, it feels even less than that. Hopefully this new restriction won't stop us from beating our rival in our penultimate battle. He starts with his Pidgeot, as always, while we bring out Junie. They waste their first turn on a Feather Dance before being hit hard by an Ice Beam. We lose a third of our HP to a Wing Attack before finishing them off with one more attack. Rhyhorn is in next and gets destroyed by a Surf, and our rival has the genius idea to send out the Fire Dog after seeing that. Predictably, Growlithe goes down to a single Surf, and his Execute comes in just to go down to a single Ice Beam. Alakazam comes in, and we switch to Santana as they use Disable, which fails. Alakazam sets up a Calm Mind before a single Shadow Ball sends them to the Shadow Realm, and all he has left is Blastoise, but a few Body Slams easily takes them down, especially with the second one paralyzing them. All that's left is for us to head through Victory Road and take on the Elite Four. On the way there, we catch Aurend the Poliwag at Route 23, and in Victory Road we grab Gert the Machop. Since we've had a rather easy time, we set the level cap to match Bruno, the second Elite Four member's Ace Machamp. That gives us just enough room to evolve Junie into a Dragonite, and our final team will be Santana the Snorlax, Elian the Sandslash, Rudo the Pidgeot, Kialoha the Gyarados, and Junie the Dragonite. So let's get into it. Starting with Lorelei, she brings out Dugong, while we open with Santana. We handle their Surfs well, and a couple Brick Breaks takes them down, and Cloyster comes in. This thing has a very high physical defense and a very pathetic special defense, so we try to use Psychic, but they keep using Protect to waste our PP. After using Hail, we can finally land a Psychic, not doing as much damage as I had expected. They set up a layer of spikes before our Brick Break leaves them in the red, and they heal with a full Restore. 2 Brick Breaks leave them right back where they were, and they get off another Hail before we can finish them off. Slowbro comes in and gets packed up by a couple Shadow Balls, and Lapras is brought out next. Santana handles the Surf well before landing a Brick Break for less than half. They hit Santana with a Confuse Ray, and they then spend the next couple of turns hitting themselves, and by the time they snap out of confusion, we are down to less than a fourth of our HP. We use Body Slam, hoping to deal enough damage to bring Lapras into KO range, but not enough for them to heal, and maybe get a lucky paralysis. But neither happens, and Lorelei uses a full restore, and our next Brick Break takes out well over half their HP. I guess the first one was just a low roll. Another one beats Lapras, and all Lorelei has left is Jinx. They put Santana to sleep with a Lovely Kiss, and while they might be able to survive long enough to wake up, I choose not to risk it and switch to Kialoha, unfortunately on an attract, potentially stopping them from attacking. Luckily, they power through and land a Fire Blast to bring Jinx below half HP, and they then get hit by an Ice Punch that freezes them. We can't move on the next turn, but we dethaw on the following turn and score the takedown with the Fire Blast to win the fight. Bruno is up next, but Junie one-shots everything short of Machamp, who's only able to cut our speed with a Scary Face. This allows Hitmonlee to land a Mega Kick and his second Onix to use Double Edge, but neither are remotely close to taking out Junie, and we win the fight. Agatha is up next, and we'll be starting with Santana against her first Gengar. It of course moves first and uses Double Team, causing our Shadow Ball to miss. Then they use Confuse Ray, but Santana powers through Confusion to attack again, and misses. We switch to Kialoha as they use another Double Team, and they hit us with a Shadow Punch for little damage. Surf takes out about half their HP, and after tanking another Shadow Punch, our Surf leaves them with seemingly 1 HP. On the turn they heal, we switch back to Santana, miss another Shadow Ball, and then get confused again. And once again, they power through Confusion, but this time they're actually able to land the Shadow Ball and get the kill. Golbat is in next, and we switch to Elian on an Air Cutter, not taking too much damage, and we go for a Rock Slide, which misses. We get hit by another Air Cutter, our second Rock Slide actually lands, but it's not able to kill, and we get hit by a Bite to bring us close to half HP. One more Rock Slide gets the KO, and Haunter comes in. We swap to Santana, but Haunter uses Curse, sacrificing half of their HP to remove a quarter of ours each turn. So we switch to Kialoha, who is immediately put to sleep by Hypnosis, and we swap back to Santana, who can't be hurt by the incoming Dream Eater. Haunter moves first and puts them to sleep with Hypnosis, but luckily they wake up after a couple turns and scores the KO with a Shadow Ball. Arbok comes in and lands a Sludge Bomb, which does decent damage, and we retaliate with a Psychic, which seems to take out half their HP. One more Psychic should do the trick, but they live with hardly any HP. A crit could kill Santana here, so we swap out to Junie as they use a full restore. We then land a one-hit KO Earthquake, and her final Gengar comes in. They immediately put Junie to sleep with a Hypnosis, and with all of our team heavily weakened, sleeping, or being Rudo, we got to figure something out. We decide to switch between Junie and Kialoha to get Intimidate attack drops off, doing this as many times as possible, while taking a fair bit of damage before bringing in Santana. We did all this because Gengar's moves in this generation are all physical, and with Gengar's lowered attack, we easily survive a couple Sludge Bombs and avoid a Hypnosis to score the win with a couple Shadow Balls. Lance is up next, and we bring out our dragon to fight this Dragon Tamer. Junie's Thunderbolt KOs Gyarados before it can move. Ice Beam fails to take out Dragonair, but it just uses Safeguard, so we get them to use a full restore, and one more Ice Beam takes them out. Dragonair number 2 doesn't survive their first Ice Beam, and Dragonite comes in. To be on the safe side, we swap to Kialoha, who doesn't take too much damage from Outrage. We land a Blizzard that isn't strong enough to KO somehow, and we're hit by a second Outrage. Blizzard has low accuracy, so we try to see if Return has enough damage to KO, but it doesn't. Luckily, Dragonite locks themselves into another Outrage, so they can't heal, and a second Return takes them down. Aerodactyl comes in, and we switch to Elian on an Ancient Power, not doing a lot of damage. Our first Rock Slide misses, but after tanking a few attacks and being brought into the red, Elian is able to take out Aerodactyl to win the fight. Our final challenge is our rival, and we start with Junie to take on his Pidgeot. We outspeed and land a critical hit Ice Beam for the KO. He brings out Rhydon next, and it manages to survive an Ice Beam and land a Rock Slide for solid damage while also dropping our speed. We swap to Elian as they heal and land a couple Brick Breaks before our speed gets cut by Scary Face. We then switch to Junie to avoid incoming damage from an Earthquake, and then we can take them down with an Ice Beam. Alakazam comes in, so we swap out to Santana as they set up a Reflect, and then hit us hard with a critical hit Psychic, bringing Santana to half HP and dropping their special defense. Luckily, Shadow Ball also crits and gets a one-hit KO. Executor comes in, so we switch to Rudo and they're hit by a Giga Drain, which they can handle well. We use Fly, which does shockingly little damage if you're like me and forgot Reflect was up, and after their Egg Bomb brings Rudo below half, that Reflect wears off. We switch back to Junie, unfortunately on a Sleep Powder, and they have to survive a couple Egg Bombs before waking up and bringing Executor low with the Wing Attack before they set up a Light Screen. They try to heal, but we take them out before they can make another move, and Arcanine comes in, and their Extreme Speed brings Junie down to 69 HP. Nice. Our Earthquake doesn't even take out half their HP thanks to the Intimidate ability, and we survive another Extreme Speed and bring them into the red with an Earthquake. We then switch to Elian as they heal, not the best choice since Flamethrower takes out a majority of their HP, and our Dig fails to KO. So we swap to Kialoha, who handles Flamethrower much better and takes them down with the Surf. All he has left is Blastoise, but they miss their first two Hydro Pumps, and when they finally land one for little damage, they are already in the red. They heal, but it doesn't matter because Kialoha's Thunderbolt scores a critical hit, allowing the next one to KO before Blastoise can move again to win us the fight and the run. Except that was too easy. We're not done yet. We are going to tackle the post-game as well, and with all the negative rules we haven't implemented yet too. We'll have to sacrifice an additional Pokemon for each death. Pokemon can't be used for consecutive gym battles, which doesn't apply here. We can only have 3 moves per Pokemon. No held items. Sell every possible item in our bag. Sacrifice our 3 highest leveled Pokemon, those being Kialoha, Junie, and Santana. And finally, drop the level cap by 5. What's the level cap to begin with? Well, since we use Bruno as our level cap, we'll do it again. In his rematch, his Machamp is level 68, so take 5 away from that, and that leaves us with a level cap of 63. To enter the post-game, there are 2 requirements. First off, we'll need to have 60 Pokemon obtained, so we'll have to evolve some of our Pokemon. This takes our PC from looking like this to this. And because we need to sacrifice a Pokemon for each evolution, it now looks like this. We also need to beat the first Sevi Island quest. We throw together a quick team, and nothing of note happens besides us trying to catch and execute in the Berry Forest, and nearly losing half of our team before giving up. After getting the National Dex, we can enter the real post-game content. First, we head up Kindle Road and come across a Ponyta. But because it's not a valid encounter since we have no living fire types, we can't catch it. But in the nearby Spa Cave, we get the Rock Smash HM. Heading up to Mount Ember, we take on a couple Rocket Grunts, and we can start breaking some of the rocks in the cave where we get the Ruby for the quest that unlocks the Elite Four rematches. On a specific floor, we have a small chance to find Magcargo when we break those rocks, a fire/rock type which we can catch. It takes a while to find the Magcargo, partially because the encounter tables for the floors are attributed to the wrong ones on Cerebi, but we're able to catch Mina the Magcargo, allowing us to grab Sextus the Ponyta, neither of which will ever be seen again, meaning that entire segment was pointless. But now that we can go to the rest of the Sevi Islands, maybe some of the new encounters will be used. On 4 Island, we catch April the Merrill. In Icefall Cave, we get Johan the Swinub. Entering the Pattern Bush, we're lucky enough for our first encounter to be a Heracross, who we name Rio. We catch Suni the Sentret on the Water Path, and Vivi the Natu in Ruin Valley, which is also where I put my amazing pattern recognition skills, and that tiny bit of Braille I know from solving the Reggie puzzle when I was 10 to use to get to the bottom of the dotted hole and watch the Sapphire get stolen. Before confronting Team Rocket to get the Sapphire back, we catch Wenzel the Fanpea at the canyon entrance, and we were hoping for a Larvitar in the Sevalt Canyon, but we get a Marowak named Chernobog. We clear out the Rocket hideout with a couple close calls but no deaths, and it's time for us to raise up a final team for the rematch. We decide on bringing in Rio the Heracross, Yash the Muck, Rudo the Pidgeot, Johan the Piloswine, who we sacrificed Wenzel to evolve, and Shams the Slowbro. So let's get into it. First up is the Lorelei rematch, and we're starting with Rio, who we have poisoned so their Guts ability activates. This gives them enough power to one-shot Lorelei's entire team for an easy win. Next up is Bruno, starting with the Steelix while we bring out Shams. Their Crunch does solid damage, but our Surf is a one-hit KO and he brings out his second Steelix, repeating the events of the first turn. Hitmonlee comes in, and they miss a Mega Kick before our Psychic brings them to the edge of death. We swap out to Yash as they heal, and we get hit hard by an Earthquake while we use Flamethrower, not dealing a lot of damage. But knowing another Earthquake is guaranteed, we can swap to Rudo, who can take them out with a Fly. Hitmonchan comes in, and we use Fly, and they use Counter on the turn they go up. Well, we better hope Fly kills them since a Counter would likely kill Rudo. Fly does not kill. Maybe they don't go for Counter here. Unfortunately, we have no such luck, and Rudo goes down to Counter, and we lose the run. But honestly, we probably wouldn't have gone much further anyways. Rio can take out the rest of Bruno's team, but Agatha is up next. We get a great start with Shams avoiding her Gengar's Hypnosis and scoring a one-hit KO Psychic, but they then lose a lot of HP while taking down Crobat and barely survive their encounter with Arbok. Gengar number 2 kills them with a Sludge Bomb, and with this death, we really don't have anything that can handle her team. Yash hardly does any damage and isn't bulky enough to really wall anything. My biggest regret right now is thinking they'd be a good Pokemon to use. None of Rio's moves are good against Agatha's team, and they're barely able to take out Gengar, but then succumbs to the poison we afflicted them with earlier. All that's left is Johan and Agatha's Mischievous. We get a brief spark of hope that we'll win when our Ice Beam freezes them, but they immediately thaw. And with Agatha still able to heal, Johan gets overwhelmed and killed by a Psychic. Even if we did win here, we'd still need to take on Lance and our rival, both packing pseudo-legendary Pokemon at much higher levels. We gave it a good try, and I think we did an alright job, even if bringing in a Muck to the Elite Four was a massive mistake. I redid the overlay and hope you all like it. I think it turned out good. Anyways, I've been Hextasy, and thanks for watching. Maybe I was in the wrong for attacking a Pokemon 11 levels below Maybe I was in the wrong for attacking a... Frick.